Recently, we traveled to the Republic of Singapore, a small, culturally diverse, and highly successful city-state. In less than 50 years, Singapore has transformed itself into one of the most dynamic and productive countries in Southeast Asia. With limited resources but an openness to innovation, the government has helped make Singapore an ideal place to live, work, and play. This is America visits the Republic of Singapore. This is America is made possible by the National Education Association, the nation's largest advocate for children and public education. The American Federation of Teachers, a union of professionals. The Singapore Tourism Board, there's something for everyone. Singapore Airlines, a great way to fly. Punsan Corporation, forging a higher global standard. The CTC Foundation, AFO Communications, and the Rotondaro Family Trust. In a country as small as Singapore, it's a great surprise to discover that both visitors and residents have an amazing number of options for fun, recreation, and relaxation, and of course, food. Why is Singapore a good place to play?
There's so many ways to describe playing, right? It is what you want to do and not what you have to do. Because, you know, you get excited about sports, you get excited about eating, you know, because of the kinds of food that you get to taste. You get excited about music, entertainment. And these are all areas that have grown tremendously in Singapore. So when you talk about what to play, I kind of think of it as what people actually want to do because they like doing it.
Tourism, big business here, huh?
Getting bigger.
Bigger and bigger. It's changed.
It's growing.
I was here 11 years ago, and my word, this place has just changed so dramatically.
Yes, indeed. And, you know, just as the country is changing, tourism changes as a result of that.
What top 3 things would you have us do, experience here in Singapore?
Well, I would start with the Bayfront as one of the highlights, because when you get to the middle of Marina Bay, you do get a very, very good sense of what the city is like. You look at the skyline, you see the developments of the business district, and you look at how we've developed as a city. The life that the water has brought to us, translated, right? And you look at all the developments, the integrated resort, Marina Bay Sands stands right there. You see the Esplanade, it's part of the performing theatre, the music infrastructure that we have. You see the entire civic district not far from the bay, the museums, the historical aspects of Singapore. I certainly recommend a nice visit to Sentosa, because what started a long time ago, Sentosa, the island.
Yep.
It's just been turned into what they call a playground for families.
Yeah.
But, you know, one that makes people feel at ease. You can hang out at the beach, you can just hang out at one of the restaurants, hotels, you can go to Resorts World, that's fine. I mean, if you like rides, that's the place to go. And still, very, very green.
Okay, so we got the Bay Area, we've got the Sentosa, and the third one?
Oh, the third one becomes very difficult. But I'll give you my personal choice.
Yes.
Which is actually the Botanic Gardens.
Botanic Gardens?
Yes.
Ah, why so?
Well, this is a place that is very special because, you know, it's been around for 150 years. I mean, it's part of our history. But the fact that I used to hang out there. I used to go running in the Botanic Gardens when I can. Morning is a good time, evening not so great, but mornings always. Because it's so green, because it really is our way of saying, look, a comfortable space, a living space that continues to grow, and you feel that it is part of the community. It's part of Singapore. How we think about green spaces. I just like how Botanic Gardens has just grown over the years.
Food and eating are obsessions in Singapore. Singapore's food scene is limitless, from the phenomenon of hawker centers to high-end dining. You'll meet Willen Low, a lawyer turned chef, but first I talked with food guru KF Seetoh about street food. Street food. What an interesting phrase, street food.
Street food. What is it? What is it?
That's the question, right?
I really don't care what it is. So as long as it's good, it's cheap, it's convenient, I don't care if you call it highway food or no-way food. Street food came about because of migrant culture. We all know about migrant culture. Singapore is nothing if not for folks from all over the world coming here many, many years ago. And there was an interesting phenomenon. Everybody worked. These migrants, they came from China, India, blah, blah, blah. They didn't bring their wives. So nobody cooked for them when they went home. So some genius said, opportunity! Fashioned a little cart with a wok or a stove and stuff like this. And they planted themselves all over Singapore. In 1950, and I did some homework, this is quite true, there were already 24,000 itinerant street food vendors in Singapore street. I think in the 60s, 70s, when this independent government took over, somebody's up there said, they are an eyesore, they smell too. So let's get rid of them. Then another genius said, no sir, we can't do that. If you do that, what are they going to eat? They have become an institution that fed Singapore over the years. So he said, okay, let's build hawker centers. Remove these people who hawk stuff on the street.
Gotcha.
Hawker centers. So there we have it. This is a typical hawker center. This is one of the larger ones. It houses about a little over 200 tiny little stalls, 8 feet, 10 feet by 8 feet.
Yeah.
Today, there are 110 such hawker centers all over Singapore.
Dish.
Each stall specializes in one dish. There are some stalls that sell a particular cuisine native to their heritage or something they thoroughly came up with that has become iconic.
I got you.
So naturally, this being Chinatown, you get a lot of folks here selling Chinese food, but you can also find Indian, Malay, Straits Chinese, and even Western food.
So cheap,
convenient,
fast,
iconic. They sell dishes that are familiar with the palate of the people here. There are many dishes people can just name like this. I ink a street food guide. Sorry, I didn't bring it here for advertisement, but you could just superimpose a food guide here, Makan Sutra. It is like a Zagat in Singapore. I list about 150 different dishes, street food dishes, from staples to snacks to seafood and meats and street Western cuisine. Yes, street Western cuisine.
How about the whole food scene in Singapore? It's gotten a lot of awards. People write about it all the time. We're here.
I'm afraid so. Over the last 10 years, everybody wants a piece of the culinary action here. So you got your big, fangled, star-spangled, 3, 10-star Michelin chefs coming here to do their stuff here. And what's more interesting, there is a class of local new generation, young kids, threw away their degree, went into the kitchen and set up their own restaurants, and they are feeling it by heart. They're just going where where the beat is calling them, just listening to their own beat, and I celebrate that.
I studied law in England. I actually practiced as a lawyer for 8 years.
What kind of law?
I was doing litigation for a while, and then I became a corporate lawyer after that, doing joint ventures and mergers. Yeah, it's so scary now. As I say it, it's almost
And
unreal.
as you're saying it, I'm seeing you dressed as you
Goosebumps.
are. No, but I'm seeing you dressed as you are, and I said, doesn't look like a lawyer to me.
Doesn't look like a chef either, so a bit of an identity crisis. So what happened was I was studying in England, and the halls of residence served really appalling food. And I'm a really fussy eater, so I had no choice but to start cooking for myself.
Uh-huh.
And because most of the times I couldn't get, ingredients that I like all the ingredients that I like that remind me of home, I could get half of it from Chinatown, and the other half I had to improvise.
Uh-huh.
And the dishes that I cooked never really looked like what I had in Singapore.
Uh-huh.
But when I ate it always reminded me of home.
Ah.
And that's how we started our cuisine, and that's how I started cooking what we call modern Singaporean food.
But the lawyer piece, when do you jump from being a lawyer to a full-time chef and running restaurants?
Well, what happened was in the last 2 years while I was still working as a lawyer, on weekends I became a sort of a chef for hire. If you had a dinner party at home, I would be your chef. I'll come and discuss the menu with you. On the day, my colleagues who are lawyers would double out as my waitress. And I'll do that every weekend. And so Mondays to Fridays I'll be a lawyer, and Saturday and Sundays I became a chef for hire. I did that for 2 years, and everyone was saying, you should stop being a lawyer, be a chef, or to become a chef.
Nice.
And since no one would hire me as a chef, because I have no experience, I had to open my own restaurant. And so when we first opened, everybody came and said, what's the cuisine you serve?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I said, well, I cook something that I like to eat. There's a bit of Singaporean, there's a bit of something that I grew up in, when I was in England, something that maybe from Malaysia, from Thailand, flavors that I like from Japan. So I've always said it was things I like to eat until one day, someone said, no, you have to give me a term. And we said, well, modern Singaporean, because that's essentially what I am. And that's essentially what the food is. It goes back to the Singaporean roots. At some point you'll find something that's familiar, and it's something that I grew up with, or it's a hawker dish that I like, or an ingredient that I grow in my garden.
We've only been in Singapore for a few days.
Right.
I was here 10 or 11 years ago.
Right.
What is there about Singapore and Singaporeans that food plays such a huge role?
I don't know. We are so obsessed about food. It's funny. I mean, I don't think anywhere else in the world when you're having a meal, let's say we are having lunch now, and we'll be talking about what we will have for breakfast tomorrow. We will not be talking about dinner because we already talked about that yesterday, but we'll be planning for breakfast tomorrow. I don't know. I think maybe because of where Singapore is, it's sort of a meeting point for different cultures, different races, nationalities. And when you have different people coming in, bringing different ingredients in, it's magic waiting to happen.
The government of Singapore always seems to be attracting the very best in business and entertainment. It's about planning and looking into the future. We spoke with the CEO of the Marina Bay Sands to learn how a Las Vegas iconic company came to be in Singapore.
The key to Singapore's success is to be nimble and recognize that the environment is changing, and therefore Singapore needs to change as well. And so the introduction of integrated resorts, I think, is one example of how Singapore has understood the importance and the value of tourism as a growth industry for this country, and has acted decisively and moved forward quickly. It now has 2 large successful integrated resorts that are operating and contributing to the economy here, while a lot of other countries are sitting back and looking at Singapore as an example and being very slow in evaluating the opportunity to increase their tourism. So Singapore's early mover status is something that is paying very significant dividends.
I've never heard the term integrated resorts before. Where does that come from?
An integrated resort really is a business, leisure, and entertainment complex that has more under one roof than any other kind of mixed-use development. It's the most powerful tourism driver known today. And so we have, aside from the very small casino, we have 2,600 hotel rooms, we have 2 Broadway-style theaters, we have a fantastic high-end luxury mall, we have a meetings and convention facility that's more than 1.2 million square feet. We have a museum. The list goes on and on. So there's something here for everyone, whether you're here for leisure or business.
A trip to Singapore from the United States is a long one, but well worth the journey. Everyone has heard about Singapore Airlines being so terrific, and it really is. The airline, on the cutting edge with an 18-hour nonstop flight from either Newark or Los Angeles, has a history that even precedes Singapore itself.
How is it possible that they can fly 18 hours? It's one of the longest flights around, isn't it?
It is. It is the longest commercial flight. And the plane we use is the Airbus A345, which has the longest range amongst all the commercial planes.
Four engines?
4 engines.
Yeah. Is there anything possible that could go further than that?
You only need to go halfway around the world because it doesn't make sense to go further than halfway around the world.
I got you. Singapore Airlines. It has a fascinating history, doesn't it?
Yes. We go back a long way. We started life 1947 as the Malayan Airways, and we became Singapore Airlines in 1972. Yeah. So since then we have grown, and we have from a small airline with a couple of Boeing 707s to what we have now.
In the early days, in the 50s, 60s, what countries did they fly to, and was it passenger or cargo?
Passenger, and mainly Southeast Asia, the region. Well, in those days, planes don't go very far.
Yeah.
And I think from the region around Malaysia, Southeast Asia, we went up to Hong Kong. And it was later, then we started to venture further afield to Europe, to Australia.
And as aviation developed as well, huh?
That's right.
Longer range.
That's right.
So you talk about Singapore Airlines having grown from those early days. Right now, if you looked at last year or a couple of years ago, whatever statistics you have, how many passengers might fly on Singapore Air or Silk Air, which is another one of your subsidies, of throughout the entire year?
Well, now we carry about 16 million passengers.
16 million?
Yes.
How many aircraft do you have?
Just over 100.
100? And from the smallest to the largest, I gather, huh?
For SIA, the smallest plane we have is Boeing 777.
That's a big one, huh?
Yeah.
How many countries are you hitting?
I think we have about 60 over destinations.
Oh, so this is big time. But you also have, as I mentioned, Silk Air,
We have Silk
Tiger
Air.
Air, Singapore Cargo. They're
That's right.
all part of the package?
Silk Air is our 100% owned subsidiary. It acts as a regional feeder to our network, so it operates within Southeast Asia, parts of India, parts of China. SI Cargo is also a 100% owned subsidiary dealing exclusively in freight. We have a shareholding in Tiger. That's about 34%. Yeah.
And you also have a stake in Virgin, don't you?
Yes, we still have a stake in Virgin.
But it's a big stake, isn't it?
We own 49% of Virgin Atlantic.
Yeah. As you fly around the world yourself, as a passenger, what are the things that you look for?
I think you want to, first of all, you want to make sure that you travel and arrive comfortably, safely, on time, which means that all the basics must be there, the punctuality, safety, comfort, and not only on the plane, but also before you fly and after you fly. So I think we want to make sure that the entire flying experience is a good one.
A Broadway production of The Lion King, a major Salvador Dali exhibition, and a Lady Gaga appearance say that Singapore attracts the biggest and the brightest in arts and entertainment. However, the real story in Singapore may be what's happening locally and how the arts are affecting the people. The art scene here in Singapore. Paint a picture for us.
Oh, extremely vibrant. Compared to my colleagues in many of the developed economies, we are probably one of the few cities where funding for the arts, support for the arts, actually has grown. Funding has almost doubled against a backdrop of cuts everywhere else. when we talk about the arts now, we talk about how it helps society, the intrinsic values, yeah, how it helps the individual to be a better person, to help the individual with learning, with how tools for expression, to cope emotionally with the social changes around them, to look through different lenses, and the individual as part of a community and part of society. And hence, when we talk about what's happening in the arts in Singapore, aside from all the trappings that you find in a great global city, yeah, there's loads happening here. But we're also looking at how it is brought down to man in the street, how relevant it is to them. So yeah, lots of things happening.
On a day-to-day level, being the person in charge of the National Arts Council, what's the most satisfying piece of what you're doing right now, and what's the most challenging?
Let me start with the challenging. I guess mindsets will always be the challenge, that the arts is seen as something for someone else, and it's also an activity that is the end of the dessert that you perhaps consume, yeah, should you have that disposition to do so at some point in life.
Nice.
Yeah? And the mindset I wish to change is that arts really is the salt. You need it through all the meals, through all stages of life.
Nice.
Yeah? That's one.
Nice.
You know? But we are making, there is traction, yeah, in working towards that change. And this is where we talk about what satisfies me most. The magic moment is when eyes lighten, yeah, heart, is relieved of the burdens for that moment. Yeah? We're not talking of some epiphany where the life, your life changes totally, but for that moment, when you see, the glitter, yeah, a spark, a smile, right? That all has been relieved because of an engagement, of being touched. I think that gives me the greatest satisfaction, how it matters to people.
What's the art scene here?
It's growing, like anywhere else. I mean, it's taken leaps and bounds in the past 5-10 years. And there's diversity in the scene. So you can, at any given time, pick up a flyer for a mainstream big old musical,
Yeah.
or a really edgy kind of niche type production, experimental type,
That's your bag, right?
That's my thing.
Yeah, experimental. And are young people getting attracted to the theater as well?
They certainly are. I mean, there's a lot more arts education. There's an art school. There's just, and young people, they're just, our parents were the ones that, killed themselves to support us.
Yes. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
And Asian parents do that, But we're kind of this generation that now has this, this, and the generation following, the younger generations, this kind of freedom, and this kind of
Go ahead, nail it.
well, to float.
To float.
I've been playing music in Singapore for about 20 years. When I first started out in my early teens to now, there's been significant changes. As a participant, obviously, there's greater forms of inspiration because 10 years ago, the bands that you wanted to see, that you read about or saw on MTV, they probably wouldn't pass through Singapore. Now, almost every big act or even established independent acts will be traveling through Singapore, and there are opportunities to watch concerts all year round. Right? As a participant, you can be continuously inspired by the fact that all these people are coming to Singapore and you can get to see them. As a person who plays or performs music, I think the opportunities are also greater in terms of working with corporates, in terms of getting funding from the government, in terms of going out overseas. There are more and more increasingly Singaporean bands that are doing international tours and making small ripples in the music industry overseas. But while I think for me personally, It might not be my generation of musicians that will make it for Singapore, but I think we have been building the foundations, and probably the generations to come will be seeing more success than in the future.
Special thanks to the staff of the Fullerton Hotel in Singapore and the Embassy of Singapore in Washington. For information about my new book, The Chance of a Lifetime, and online video for all This Is America programs, visit our website, thisisamerica.net. This is America is made possible by the National Education Association, the nation's largest advocate for children and public education. The American Federation of Teachers, a union of professionals. Punsan Corporation, forging a higher global standard. The CTC Foundation, AFO Communications, and the Rotondaro Family Trust.